Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Jürgen De Smet. We talked about the failures along the way, creating trust at the coffee machine, and the skateboarding we did together. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello with me I have Jürgen. Good evening.
Hello, Yves. Glad to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yes, we have been working for a long time together, or a long time ago, working for the first time. And what I want to do before we jump in is show a little bit on where we are. And I'm here in Drongen or in Ghent. And if I go as Google to show us where you are, then we're moving not that far away from to Kortrijk, which is still in the same time zone. And so at this very moment, it's a couple of minutes after 8 o'clock in the evening for me and for you as well, because we're in the same time zone, the same country, and not that far away.
Which is different than when we were together. You were in Bordeaux, I was in Belgium.
Exactly. Well, still the same time zone, but exactly we were more than 1,000 kilometers apart. That's actually true. And we spend a lot of time in planes going to all other kind of cities that we're collaborating with. Jürgen, for the few people that don't know you, could you, before we jump into the questions, give a short introduction of who are you?
Who am I? So, Jürgen, so married, 2 kids, 2 boys, nice boys, fun boys, completely different personalities, which is making it interesting in life. So that's the main part of who I am. And then next to that, I enjoy my work. I don't even call it work; it's a hobby. So I love what I'm doing at work, at all the endeavors I do. So I think that's interesting. I also started with Scrum. Actually, not really Scrum, extreme programming with a bit of Scrum since 1998, which is quite nice in that scenario. So I've been a long time in this world, just like you, Yves. So.
Exactly, and I think we share that one thing. Like the thank God it's Friday is something I've never experienced. I just love what I'm doing, just as you, and I think this is where we recognized, we found each other. I would say in the community, and so that was in that sense. I always look forward to the people that I'm talking to, but today was also like, it's actually been way too long. And I think the last time we met was actually somewhere in another country. We both live rather close together, but then we meet each other in other places of the world. So but that's a little bit the world that we run in. Okay, let's jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you
are? I thought about it just before entering our conversation here, and I think that not that many people know that I used to be a long-time skateboarder. I think from my 13, 12 years old till I'm 21, 22, something like that. So I was, skateboarding on streets and ramps and all that stuff. And the way that formed me, I noticed it not really during my college years, because at college years and things like that, I was an average student, just doing enough to pass on. In that scenario, even though I graduated cum laude at computer science, but that doesn't matter.
So it means that it's still a little more doing than just enough, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's because of the passion and the interest in the domain that it went that easy. But when I really saw that skateboarding and this kind of continuous learning, because that's skateboarding, you fall down, you step up, and you try again. Until you get it, and then you try something else. So you keep trying, you keep exploring and getting better and better and better at things. So this kind of skateboarding behavior, I recognized when I started working. I had the same thing. It's always getting better, getting more, experimenting more, trying new things. So new tricks all the time, continuous learning.
Yeah, what I find interesting is that when you say getting up and retrying. So that's something that we typically know. But I think I heard you say also that once you figured it out, you try something else because it already bores you, or is that would you then still retry, or did I hear something that you didn't say?
No, you put something on top of it. So at first it's standing up and taking corners. Then you start taking ollies, and then when the ollies start flying in, then you do 360s, and then impossibles, and you keep trying more difficult scenarios. Which I think in life we get into similar situations. So you learn easy steps, and then you go into more complex situations and try to find your way around and figure it out. And
Yeah, I really like that you and I think it's with lots of sports and lots of things, but this is something I've never skateboarded or roller skate or anything like that, but I can, well, roller skating a bit, but not with tricks. But it's something when I think about it, that's exactly what you do. You probably fall more than anything else, and you have to, well, either you feel hurt and you stop it, or you're passionate about it and you keep working on that kind of
uh,
things. So
by the
that's
way, even though if people look at me today, they would not assume like that, but I did a hell of a lot of sports. And you said you get bored, or you easily get bored. Maybe I do, because I tried many sports, and then I get a kind of medal or a cup in some kind of competition, and then for me it was like, yeah, I know what it is about. I
hmm,
did competition in swimming. I did competition in fishing, by the way.
and
Soccer,
fishing.
yeah, soccer,
Wow.
karate, Thai box. But there is not continuous learning, continuous new movements or experiments you can try, which skateboarding is. So all those previous sports, it went for a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, and then it was something else. My skateboarding went from 13 till 21, 22 something, because there's always something new. And even if there's not something new that you could pick up from somebody else, then you try something new by yourself. So there's no limits. And
Wow.
this,
Yeah,
I also consider this today in today's business world. There's no limits.
I still remember a famous. I don't know if it's from you, but it's a quote that you used a lot in those days, or at least 10 years ago, when you said like, "Okay, was it about the stars? If you aim for the stars, you're no, don't aim for the sky because you're in close with the stars." Or what was that
I
quote?
think it's something like, yeah, don't aim for the sky. No, don't say the sky is the limit if there are footprints on the moon.
That was it. That was the one. Yeah, that's the quote I always loved. That it's not about the sky or the stars. There's actually things out there as well. So that's that we can aim much further.
This
So
is
yeah.
what we see often. So people come and it's like, yeah, this is impossible. You cannot do this. But for what is an impossibility is for some other organization possibly already reality.
Mhm. Yeah, and well, you talked about Agfa. I do remember that on my first day with a person that I was working with, I said, "Well, one of the possibilities is we might do this or that," and I could see in the eyes like, okay, this is way out of line. So, but then this is not something for now. This is just as a kind of inspiration. This is what's possible, or what we did somewhere else. And then I remember still, I think 4 or 5 years after I've left, receiving an email. Eve, do you know about this and this and that? And this is something we could have do. And it's like, I looked back at my notes and I could literally find that I said it on the first day to that person, and they said no possible. And now he was trying to teach me something. It's like, yeah, that's a little bit for me what you just said. We try stuff and we inspire people, and sometimes it might scare them. They might not be ready, but somehow that little seed got planted, and then at the moment that they feel ready for it, they might still try. And yeah, I think that's a good thing. And so when you said, okay, you learned a lot of that influenced you. Could you see later, because you said you didn't realize it at the time, when was the moment that you realized that was that thing about getting up and retrying, that you learned that?
Wow, when I really started my say professional career. So as what was it, employee number 12 at that moment in time. So it was,
Wow.
well, back in that day, they just said it's a small company. Today it would be startup.
Mhm.
So, and it's like we had this real musketeer thing, one for all or for one. But back in those days, you're a bit more cowboy than it would be today in startups, by the way. So
Mhm.
there was quite some failure along the way and learning. So stepping up, learn how to do it more appropriately, and then continue. And I think this was one of the ingredients that made us really a highly effective team, in my opinion, because we failed together and we succeeded together. So I still
Mm.
remember one of my early days. It's a hospital environment, by the way. So, and I did the drop table, but on the wrong database instance. So, and I realized
Oops.
after entering in the commit,
Okay.
so a bit too late. And it's like, yeah, call the IT department. Do you have a backup? Yeah, from last week.
Wow.
And then together with my colleagues then at that moment in time, we worked till somewhere 4 a.m. We could recover from messages that go from one system to another. We could recover almost everything from the missing week in that scenario. So and at 4 a.m. we were very happy. We celebrated with a couple of drinks. And at 8:30 a.m. we were there again, continuing for another client.
Wow.
So, and I think this kind of stress, high celebration, pains as well. Sharing this as a couple of.
But I guess you never deleted the table anymore in production after that.
No, you learn, so you don't do this anymore. You just delete some rows now. It's okay.
Yeah, but
No,
it's
but, so
or you make
also
sure
I
that
told,
you have backups, not or on a shorter base or whatever. Yeah.
while you start coding differently. So I'm one of the few lucky ones when I started with coding that I also had to do the phone calls and the updates and the installations. No SaaS solutions, by the way, all on premises. So picking up the phone when customers were annoyed. So you immediately start coding differently. So you learn a lot. You learn also how to make smaller changes. So this extreme programming immediately came up, and test-driven development, which I think is a lifesaver in this scenario, to be able to skateboard your way around.
Yeah, because you need, like you say, if you make smaller changes, at least the problems that you do are smaller as well and easier to adapt. Okay, if you delete one row, that's probably not that bad than just deleting a full table.
Yeah.
It might take longer to delete everything, but at least by the time you've done it, you realize it also after one delete, probably before the full table is gone.
And not only that, Eve, so you were part of the skateboarding. So at a certain moment in time, we got acquired. From a small company to a bigger one, a lot bigger one. So, and then did some acquisitions along the way. And then we got Scrum alike operations working pretty well for a 50 people size part of the organization. But then we grew to 5 sites in Europe. I don't know anymore. So 300, 400 people, something like that. So then it's like, how the hell do we do this? Back in those days, all those scaling frameworks, way too many these days, by the way. But anyhow, all those scaling frameworks didn't exist. And also
No, I
there,
do
I can
remember
feel
our
example.
conversation. Yeah, we talked about the book from damn it, from Bas, and so with which turned out later to become less, but at that moment when we were using these books, it wasn't called less at that moment. Huh? We were,
No. So we used the collective common sense, a hell of a lot of systems thinking and lean thinking to make it
Mhm.
work. And at the end, we came up with something which is today probably called less huge.
Yeah, I think that is yeah, it was really wonderful way of doing that, collaborating. Also a lot of discussions, a lot of hard times, because the different it was for me very interesting to see how we were aligned at start, but once we were all on our own in the different departments, different countries, very quickly it felt like we were separate because we felt so much part of that location where we were, and that was very interesting to see. Oh, even we, because we knew each other before, we were rather aligned, and there was still a lot of stress because all of a sudden I was more Bordeaux, you were more still Ghent, and so yeah,
Do
that
you
was
still
interesting.
remember our meeting with all the externals and internals trying to get this thing going in Bonn?
Yeah, yeah.
Where it went that hard that I also said, okay, now I need a moment outside without anybody. Give it 10 minutes.
That was the exact moment I was thinking about, because
Yeah.
it was. I think we went really hard for a lot of us. Yeah, and I think, and at the same time, I think both of us and everybody involved learned so much, and we pulled through to that. I think for me, it's one of the things that I still love when things are going hard. To maybe it's indeed like you said, well, wait a minute, let's take. I need some break. That's because otherwise we'll say maybe stupid things or whatever, and things we might regret, and that is also an important thing. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you?
This is actually an easy one for myself.
Hmm.
When I was 15 years and something, I did the entry exams for the cadetten school. Okay, sorry for the Dutch here now. So, and I
The
was
army.
yeah, and I was enlisted to enroll at the age of 16. I even have my letter, so you can enter the school at that date. So really, at that moment in time, and then 2 months before I would go into the military academy, they cancelled it. So the government said we're not going to do this anymore.
Hmm.
So I got a new letter saying it's over, no cadetten anymore. So you can join again in the real military school later on. So and then afterwards in school it started to fade away, and then I tried the Rijkswacht, so the police, the Belgian police. Back in the old days, we had
Wow.
two different police things. Now it's only one. So I tried Rijkswacht to immediately have what is it, stripe or star or whatever. So and there I passed everything except of the last part that they examined. And then as a fallback, I went to my hobby at that moment in time, which was computers. So in the early days with the Macintosh and the Schneider and the real floppy disks and the cassettes and all of that stuff. Where
Wow.
it's not only playing,
Yes.
I was also looking in like how does this thing work and playing around in QBasic. So I went back in that scenario, and then yeah,
So
from there
IT
moment
is
on,
really the backup scenario for you.
it was the IT coding
Or
was
it was.
became my backup scenario. Then again, it was something I had to joy in already from a very young age. So it's not that
Hmm.
it was that harmful. And
Hmm.
looking at now at the passion that I go through the technology domain, the IT and product development domain, it's not a bad choice at all.
I think so as well. I'm really curious about, yeah, with all the change agency that you have in you, how that would have worked at the military, or at the police.
Well,
Well, they get to, at the same time they went also through multiple changes, so maybe you would have been a part of these changes in a way. That's
today today with the in hindsight, I think it's best that it didn't went through. So looking back in not necessarily school but afterwards at work, just complying to the bosses on top and doing whatever they tell me is not really something I necessarily did. Uh,
exactly, yeah.
unless I really believed in the effectiveness or the use of it. So
Mhm.
so one of the things is there. So things that we see often happening, people feeling pressured. I didn't have this, so it's not because some project manager came to me or somebody else came to me, or in my early days, the co-founder, oh, we have to, very stressed. It's like, yeah, my question was, who promised this? Oh, yeah, but nobody, they wanted it. It's like, yeah, but if you didn't promise and I didn't promise, why do we bother that much?
Mhm.
So I
So
really didn't really comply to that thing. And I think when we work together in the larger organization, ACFA, you have seen similar things when I was part of that management group. So um,
and I think it's also what gave a lot of the energy for the group around you or below you, depending on at what level you were at that level, to for people to give, yeah, to really try to make the best out of it, not because of you said it or something else. I remember we organized a meeting, so we said like, okay, this is going to way we're going to organize stuff. And I remember cramping way too many people in a meeting room in Bordeaux. and seeing nobody paying attention to what you were saying. And so after the break, I said, we took a break, and I said to people, like, if you're not interested, you're not paying attention, you only need to come back to when you're interested. And I do remember, I didn't tell you, and I do remember that you called me afterwards and said, what happened in the break? Because people were so much more attentive, and they actually replied. And yeah, because the people were there by choice, and even the people that were attentive, after that, they were not attentive before, but now they made the conscious decision, actually, I do want to be here, so maybe I should pay attention. And that shifted the whole dynamic. And the people who left, who were so happy that they could leave, actually took the courage and took the responsibility to learn the days after. And so I think, it was something. And I didn't check with you or anyone. It was like, this is not working. So I basically tell people, look, take your responsibility. If you feel that you can do something else more productive, please go, because this is not working. And and that was but I remember that getting that phone call or that chat, or I don't know how it was, but you asking that question was like, oh God, am I in trouble? And then was like, no, what did you do? Because it worked. What did you do? And that was exactly what it needed to be done. So
the law of the 2 feet.
Exactly. That's exactly what I used. Okay, let's move to that third question. If what do you consider your biggest challenge right now, and at least the biggest challenge that you want to share openly on the internet, and why is it a good thing for you?
I'm pretty open on publicly, so I think a long-term challenge is patience, and making it maybe even worse is being a perfectionist in things. Things can always be better. Even though if others come over, oh, this was great, I always have, but and the patience stuff, I've been working on this for a very long time already. Even when you worked with me, and that time I was already trying to be more patient in certain aspects. There are certain domains or things where some people actually consider me these days very patient on things. But there's still a lot of other domains where I still be not that patient enough. And if we then say, okay, why do you consider it maybe a good thing? Maybe because of lack of patience in combination with the perfectionism. I might get organizations and people around me, including myself, further ahead than I might assumed or imagined before. So I think it triggers energy as well to keep going, to move ahead, maybe even move too fast at certain moment in times. But if I look at what has been achieved in my past employeeship, and especially afterwards in all the consultancy gigs that I had, I think it also has a great contribution in those results. Then again, I still need some work, because patience is not really.
But I think it. Well, if I look from the outside, I do. Yeah, I think especially because once you start to become self-employed, we also worked at some places together, where you left like way earlier than I would in a way, because you said like, oh, this is not going anywhere, and I had some more patience. And I think both these dynamics, for me, are playing out really well, because the fact that you're leaving, saying, look, what does it even bring that I'm here, because you're not want to go at the speed that I can go, sends a really big message to companies.
Yeah, and again, this is at that moment in time, this was my first job as a consultant. So I emptied my bank account. I had a mortgage, a kid at home, a wife at home, and all of that stuff. So, and the client where we were working had this reputation of 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. So the first 3 months I could work with 5 teams. They did a great job. The second 3 months I was poking the system to have more impact, or making life better for the 5 teams, and not only the 5 in a broader context. But there was no real movement. So when they came with this contract extension, it's like, sharing some observations and things like that. They were not used to consultants asking questions before signing, apparently. And then they were like, no, we will change it. And I was like, okay, then I will sign. Yeah, after our release in summertime. No. But then coming home, Eve, was the shock of all time, because emptying the bank account and things, having mortgage, the first time when I came home with the extension of 3 months, I physically saw my wife becoming more relaxed. The second time when I refused to sign up for the next 3 months, I come home, I said to my wife, yeah, they offered me a contract extension. You see physically, woof, the relief. And then I said, I refused. I can assure you. It was a
Yeah,
fun time at home.
been through that part as well, but I think, yeah, I have to admit that I needed to have some safety net before I dared to do that. Also because of I lived a couple of years of welfare, so I know what it is to literally have no money to eat or anything like that. So I didn't want to do that with a partner or with children. But once you have some kind of safety net, I think it's at the moment that it's no longer working, then it doesn't help, of course. But I do
At that
understand.
moment in time, and even today, you know what? If you're in IT dev and you are skilled enough in decent coding, in 2 weeks you have another job.
Well,
So
I think both of us, we don't want just any other job. We want to have the impact on the other. That I think that's the hardest part. Not having a job, or so leaving a job is not that hard for me. But accepting, well, figuring out, is this the kind of thing that I really want to do? I think and I think if I maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're even more severe on these kind of things, in these things, like, okay, really trying to understand at a higher level, where is this going to get, that kind of things.
at least I try to. So
Is can you don't have to go into that, but I know at some point you built a company where there were other people around you, not just you. Was that harder for you in that situation? Because then it's not just your job and your family, but then it also depends on, for other people's, their jobs and things like that.
well, as the first time when I became self-employed after 16 years being employee at the same company, 16 years employee at the same company, doing a large transformation, so not just in and out. So when I became a consultant, I was not alone. So I worked with 2 others. So as a smaller entity, this was a not so great experience. So I think after a year or 2 years, we split, and then we fall down and stood up running. We started co-learning. So I'm even hope to say this. So co-learning as a collective, and also at certain moment in times with employees involved. I think we had a great experimental lab in trying things out in different ways, on collaborating with freelance, with employees, on a very, very, very transparent environment. With basically, even though I was founder in that thing, not really a hierarchy or much else. So everybody was pretty much in charge of everything, including the finances of the full shebang. So I think it worked okay, but at certain moment in times you see that some people are more into this as a real, it's a job and it's a consultancy thing. Well, some of the others were more into it, like myself. It's a hobby and it's impact. At least what I assume and I hope that I leave a positive impact to the people I work with. I've seen this as an employee in Okval, but I also see this now with the clients I work with now. If they go on stage and start talking, I always hear there's happy employees, there's less turnover and all of that stuff. So engagement going up. So I think I leave a good place. So with the people that are like-minded, this was not that difficult. With the others, it was more difficult. And because it was more of a firm structure, it was also not that easy to just say, okay, let's split or things like that. We didn't really have this in between. So, and over time, we pretty much, some of us grew apart from each other. So it split, it stopped. And today it's actually just the same thing, but based on 2 brands with lots more freedom, because that was one of the stress factors. There was a part which was public trainings and courses and certifications, and there was part of consultancy and doing the stuff at clients and really hands-on. So some of us were in both, like myself. Some others were more interested in training, some others only in the consulting. And if you start investing money in certain aspects of the business, then people get annoyed about certain money going into trainings and not giving trainings, or the other way around. So today it's 2 different entities. So we have Boost Your Scrum for public trainings here in Belgium and trainings in Belgium. And then we have the thing that is really most thing, and this is this one here with with the thing, and that's the simplification officers. That's the consultancy branch where we are not. We are a lot more picky on who to actually join or not join in this thing.
Yeah, and I've seen some of these transitions. So yeah, I think it's I would say some of these. Well, I think almost every time that you make a decision, I'm surprised, and at the same time, I understand because I see some of the struggles. Of course, I don't know the details, and I don't need to know the details. But yeah, it's wonderful how you also experiment on these kind of levels. I think that's also the kind of thing.
Well, co-learning was also stressful because as a phoner and things like that, you start. So to be honest, to everybody that was there, they were like my kids here at home. I need to take care of them. And the kind of feeling of I need to take care is very strong and also not necessarily very healthy at certain moment in time in making sure they have a job that they like, but they also grow and all that stuff. So too much concerns. If I look now at simplification officers, we're not going to work with the employees, for example, anymore. Even though some would like to, we help them to become a freelance. This scenario, this makes life already a bit easier. And it's also a lot more loose, collaborative than it was before. So I have less of this concern about I need to make sure everybody is happy and has work. And
that's well, we don't. It's dangerous to go too much into this, but I think many people who are watching here might also being like, how do you collaborate? How do you work together? I do remember us talking before the start of co-learning, and I do remember that one of the things I said at that time is like, if I would join, don't do work with employees because of the exact same things that you now say. It's not I don't want to work with the people, but there is so much other stress that then blocks you into moving things. It still was, for me, it was not the right time to join because I was literally building a house at that time, a house that I'm living in now, right now, which gave so much stress that I'm happy that I didn't join because that would not have worked out. But it still was something I regretted at that moment. But choices are choices, and the end result is there.
Skateboarding, and learning a lot of tricks and new stuff. So, and employees was not that bad, by the way, but because of the high level of transparency, then you get sometimes you get those remarks, but you freelancers get that much money, and then I have to be okay with this kind of paycheck. But if freelancers don't work, they don't get money. If you don't don't work, you still get the money. But it's a lot of education that needs to go in there. If you're educated, that's okay, by the way. But every now and then, this is coming back. Or like, for example, let's be honest. I'm living in Belgium. You're in Belgium, and I think in Belgium, in relation to structures and process and work environments, I think we're a bit more conservative than many others. So back in those days, to really generate impact, most of the work was abroad, at least for me. And then with employees and a couple of others, it's like, but we want somewhere to work within a radius of 10 kilometers from my home. Or if we need to pass by the point with Antwerp, Brussels, if we need to go to the other side, then no way. So those constraints are also making life more difficult, of course.
I think that's, that's part of growing a business in all kind of directions and all kind of learnings. Yeah. And I've seen many similar kind of companies that work in a collaborative way that all have similar kind of transitions, like working. And I think the reason why I'm allowed to talk about this is because indeed what you say, it's the skateboarding again, like how do we learn? How do organizations learn? And I think it's also helpful, I would say, as a consultant, if you help out another startup or another small company, you know how companies work and all of that stuff. You know how it is to actually have employees and things like that. So that's, and I want to go to that next thing because I think you kind of already alluded multiple times on that. The drive. You have a lot of drive. You have a lot of passion. You call your work a hobby and all that kind of stuff. But do you know where that original drive, where that passion is coming from?
I always used to say the impact. So, and I still think it's the impact, the positive impact I make on people's life, but not only people's life, also on the business, the organization I work in. If I look at the part in Agfa I was at that moment responsible for with a couple of others, I think we managed great, and actually the people loved working in that environment. If I also look at my LinkedIn, how many people that were in the organization, peers and subordinates, actually gave me good recommendation on this. I think it's great. This is driving me forward.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I think AFA sold that unit now to somewhere else. But anyhow, so today I'm very honest. So after co-learning, I was like, okay, what's new and what is going to be the North Star, and where do we do it for, and which kind of people do we want to keep and grow into the simplification of this, for example. And then the North Star is very simple. The North Star is how many clients, customers do we get on stage bragging about the impact they achieved with our support. So we keep track of that. So this is the aim. And by now, if I look at how many clients we get on stage, that's quite a significant list, or it becomes a quite significant list. Unfortunately, still too many just clients where I took the lead. So I'm still looking forward to clients where others in our club also took the lead, where I was not part of it. But this is coming up. So this I know already, so it's coming up. So, but this is the North Star. So if you don't believe in this kind of North Star, and it's about money or being relaxed, or you just want the client next door, then don't join, because that's not what we want. What you already discovered as well in my first gig there. If I see there's no opportunity to drive real significant impact and make people's life easier, then I'm out. Then you don't need me.
Well, I think I will nuance that a little bit. I think you had a lot of impact even there, but you wanted to go even much faster, and there definitely were not ready for that. And some people might even, okay, it's hard to say, but some people might be so afraid of more change that they would actually kind of stop some of that stuff. And that's then both of us, they don't feel really at home there, I would say, at that kind of place.
And there's another aspect, Steve, because for working with clients, and all of the clients I work with the last decade, I would say are all well, it doesn't stop in 3 months. It's always a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. If I look at Ysoft, I'm being in touch at least already for 5 years. So it's always quite long term, not necessarily full time, or not like many think. We need somebody 5 days a week in our office. Never like that. With my kind of energy, they would go nuts. So this is what I love the most. But I also do public trainings, for example. And people ask me, oh, why do you do it? One thing is, I started being a certified trainer, and I immediately said I don't want to be lured into the money, like I see way too many other trainers lured into the money. And the only thing they do is giving training, losing touch with real life. So I immediately put a cap. 30% of my work time can be training. And not only public, also internal. So 30% of my work time training. The other needs to really go into do the stuff hands-on in a company, really help out. But for the training itself, especially my public training, I started measuring the impact of the training. So initially I did this NPS thing, and how would you recommend this course to somebody else immediately after training? So, and I got to the 100% NPS. Woohoo! But I still didn't feel really well about the time spent. It's like, and then I started automatically asking people a month after the training, what kind of experiment did you try based on the learnings you had in the course? I started tracking this. I had 100% NPS, and 18% of the people actually did something. This was very disappointing. So I started thinking about quitting this complete training thing whatsoever. But then I was like, yeah, you know what? Skateboard your way around. Let's start tweaking things and turn things around. So instead of being gentle and easy on in the training, I think people that join my last trainings, for example, all of them will say, yeah, it should have been 4 days instead of 3, because they give a hell of a lot more than they can consume, and I know this. it's high speed, and I also am a bit more black and white in a public course, especially in a public course, black and white on certain aspects, confrontational maybe in certain things. But I noticed along the years, so now since 2015 I am doing this last training, for example. Along the years, these people that actually experiment went up, and now I'm at 37 dot something percent. Which I think for a public course is not necessarily that bad. I'm still looking for better ways and more experiments to keep it going upwards. Then again, my NPS at the end of the course never hit this 100% anymore.
But that's the real impact versus I would say I see it's interesting. I see now more companies being interested in NPS, but the value of NPS seems to go down. I have the feeling it's I literally had a place, I'm not going to mention the type or whatever, but I was a customer and I was literally asked to push a button because this is the NPS score, but they didn't tell NPS. But what was interesting about it, so it was a device where you can push buttons to say how do you feel, but they blocked everything below 7. So basically you were only allowed to give 7, 8, 9, and then then if employees start doing that, and if I ask a little bit, it was very clear that employees were scored based on the results. So if the results were too bad, they got very bad feedback or whatever, and then it doesn't work anymore, of course. So
it's if you outsource to certain Indian companies, you also get this thing,
it again depends on how you work with and how you want to work, because there is the part for certain companies, but there's also the part how it's outsourced and how people are in the contract remunerating and everything. I think we can go on for a long time about these kind of things. Well, you talked already about some of your successes and some of these things, but what would you consider your biggest achievement so far, I would say? This is the question I keep asking before these days, and especially with you, I'm really interested. Is it easy for Jürgen because this is basically a moment to brag and to be really proud. Is it easy for Jürgen to brag?
If I started to learn more about marketing yourself in the last 3-4 years, I also started reading a bit more books in relation to that, because it's naturally come from within. Naturally, from within, I'm an engineer, software engineer. So it's not, and I'm a Belgian. It makes it even interesting. So when I started reading a bit of those things, and I started also trying certain things out a bit more and more. So it's getting better and better to feel comfortable with putting things out there, which I think 10 years ago I would say, what an ego. So it's becoming easier, but it's never going to be easy.
That's a little bit why I was asking, because you're rather active on lots of social media and lots of other things, but at the same time, the way I know you, and it's like, indeed, what is easy at that kind of level. So I'm not surprised that you even educate yourself on these kind of things, because it's still a job at that level, and still something that the techniques that you can learn about yourself. So I sidetracked a little bit, but let's go for that one big achievement. What would you consider your biggest achievement?
This is a difficult one. So because I consider like all the consulting gigs that I had, I consider at least 80% of them big achievements. Also, my 16 years employeeship in the same company, I think that's a tremendous achievement. But if I need to pick out one or two, then I would say one thing I'm that is quite an achievement is, for example, becoming last trainer number 4 at that moment in time, because becoming a certified last trainer is not a walk in the park. So for most of the people, including myself, it's a 1 year or a multi-year journey in writing things down and explaining things in interviews and reading, and so many things. So, and I think this is not bad at all. So it's lots of studying as well at the same time, lots of rereading the books that I read actually in the time we were together. So all that stuff. So I think that's quite an achievement. I think if you would ask any other certified less trainer, what do you feel about becoming a less trainer? I think all of them will easily come with similar responses. It's not a walk in the park and quite an achievement. So that's
Yeah, I would say the same thing, because I think, well, I'm not the trainer, and partially because of some of the things you said earlier on, I don't want to get sucked into too much just being the trainer part. I never thought about the percentage, so that's already an inspiration. But definitely, I've seen people who've been into that community taking a long time to actually become a trainer and to work on that, and I think that's yeah, I think it's really valuable to have all these discussions and to really know your stuff at that kind of level. And I have the feeling that a lot of these discussions that I see in some of the mailing lists and others are much more deeper than in other kind of communities. It's not so much about are you using the right words, but much more about do you understand the concepts. Where in I'm not going to name the other one, but there is another one where I saw people saying like, we're not accepting you because you used this type of word instead of that type of word. I was like, yeah, come on, that's not the thing. And I think Buzz and Craig are much more onto the content. Do you really understand the concepts, and can you prove that you actually have done it? Yeah.
And that's a personal one. So if we say biggest achievement, but then not personal, because my drive is not necessarily what I achieve, but what others around me achieve, then I need to go to, and I can say the name because even the CEO on stage announced that he hired Jürgen. So it's Ysoft. So it started in 2019. Today it's still going strong. So and there's this concept out there, or this assumption hypothesis out there, that the kind of agile or a transformation that you started has a lifetime of 6 to 7 years because of the rotation lifetime of C-level management in an organization. Ysoft might be different because C-level management there, or actually still the founders, so it's their own money. Where the second biggest shareholder of the company, so the co-founder Voodoo, is actually the real product owner in the organization. And why I think it's nice there. We helped kickstarting them. We helped growing them along the way. Sometimes more in the background than the foreground, but it doesn't matter. So today they are running their product development organization. So they have 3 people doing product ownership. So the co-founder plus 2 people actually helping out. There are 16 teams working on one backlog. And there's no scrum masters, no agile coaches, no management. They arrange their own promotions, their own hiring, their own firing, the full shebang. And they used to have problems to acquire people in the Prague and Brno and Ostrava region. Today they don't anymore. So there's this good spirit hanging there. And if I listen into Voodoo, then the co-founder and actually CEO and the biggest shareholder of the company, then even today they are still growing strong in a business that is not easy because it's sprint management. And this is for me a very big achievement. And actually really a personal one, Yves, really a real personal one. So you know that I can get frustrated for certain things. So and then I cool down. Recently, I could channel my frustration in the misconceptions on cognitive load and how people should be boxed into this narrow specialization. And I channeled it in such a way that I started writing an essay for a friend of mine. And then I invited others to comment, people that think like me, but also people that didn't think like I was thinking. And it turned out that I started co-writing a new book with Victor Grusic. I will pronounce his last name wrong, by the way, but anyhow. So we're going to release it somewhere end of this month. So navigating the complexity of cognitive load and software product development.
And by the time that this will be published,
and lots of, I think, 17 guides on actually, not necessarily reducing cognitive load, but making sure you can, with the same mind, you can address higher complexities, maybe. And this I'm proud about because it's instead of my frustration and voicing it, I channel it into a book.
Yeah, and I think well, it's not your first thing that you published. Let's also do that. But yeah, and by the time this will be released, of course, this podcast will be released. The book will probably be out, so I'll definitely link the book into the show notes. But I really like that you turned it again around in a different kind of way. And find ways to get, and I think that is something what I really admire, that you keep challenging yourself to, like, okay, what else could I do with that, what else could I do, same way as you have been challenging CEOs or whoever, people that you were working with, to look at for opportunities and look for things. I do remember you challenging the mayor of your city. He was thinking about, okay, we want to, we want to do much more collaborative. And you really, I think on Twitter, you contacted them, said, well, if you really want to do collaborative, you need to work in this way. And that actually resulted in a lot of workshops where citizens were invited to actually come up with plans and everything like that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
The first budget games on European grounds, so the real ones were, I think one of the biggest one was again 112 people deciding on what was it again 6-7 million to be spent from the city council and following up on that. So it's definitely not our main business, but it was a nice step up. I was thinking, if we can arrange priorities and setting priorities in big corporates, then we can do it in a city as well, don't we? And then we managed. So yeah.
And for me, the biggest thing, and I keep telling that story a lot, is I still remember seeing a guy coming in with, I don't know, so many books, but he wanted to convince the people at his table about his thing, that this is where people should invest money. And he was at the table that I was helping out with. And he ended up not voting for his own thing because the people at the table, and he came in completely prepared with all the documents. And in the end, he was understanding, like, okay, maybe that's not the most important thing for our city. And he ended up not giving money for the people that don't know how budget games work, but basically you get some money and you have to invest your money into the things at the table, or fake money, of course. But that was for me a big thing, like collaborative, a person completely convinced, I'm going to convince everybody, realizing like, okay, this is not the best decision.
Well, it shows if you put the right constraints and game rules, actually, so that actually people in a city can make sound decisions by themselves. They don't need the council or anybody else making this for them, so necessarily. Anyhow.
And like you say, it's not the main business, because I think, I don't know, 10, 20, no, somewhere between 10 and 20 consultants helping out that evening till late at night, because we only had one way to be there with everybody. So we literally had to make all the documentation and all the collaborative, all the information collected and write it down. So that was a hard night, but a fun night. So
and there's lots of pre-work and post-work also there. So
you don't need to tell me that there was a lot of things going on. But yeah, it was very interesting to see that kind of achievements and that kind of things. And I think for the people who are watching that don't know you, they might already feel that drive and that passionate, because there's so many achievements, so many different things that you invest your energy into. So let's move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Keep skateboarding. Keep skateboarding. Keep learning, keep reading, going to courses. So in your own domain, in a different domain, and maybe like when I did this agile and scaling and back in the old days as an employee, I also read about PMBOK and Prince 2 and all that to try to figure things out. So maybe it's good to look at the same thing with a different these days, for example, I'm really intrigued and following up on what's happening in the product management world. It seems that they have discovered the real agile over there as well. Come with different terminologies, different angles in this complete scenario, which is also interesting. So there's there's so much to learn that I'm not going to live long enough to actually learn all the things that I want to learn. And so I even stopped reading just novels. So I stopped reading novels. It's all yeah, real things and scenarios from companies or new framework patterns, things that are popping up. So a bit like your bookshelf behind you, except I don't have the bookshelf, because if I read a physical book, then I pass it on. So I never keep a book anymore.
It's interesting because I've been saying it online as well, that for me, I read way more things digitally, and just before Corona, when I was still spending a lot of time in my car or on trains or whatever, on public transport, I was listening to audiobooks, any kind of book that was some kind of business related, even books that I wasn't sure. I was just like, okay, I'll listen to it, and then when I really liked it, then I would still read it, because I know that I understand it better when I read it again on Kindle, because electronically. And then I'm one of the people that if I really liked it, still after reading, I would buy a physical copy to, just like you, hand it out to people, and they can say, okay, but I do want them back because I want to hand it out to more people. I can't give it. I do give a lot of books away, but at the same time, some of these things I still want to keep and give to more people. And if they find it interesting, well, then they should just buy it themselves. That's a little bit
Yeah.
works.
When I stop reading with a book, then I give it away. And if I think somebody else can benefit from the same book, then most probably I will buy another copy. But otherwise, we are very much alike in the car for long rides. At least if my family is not joining, because they get nuts otherwise. It's also
Oh yeah.
it's also audible on the radio, and I also, if Audible is playing, it's at least playing at the 1.5 speed. Um, then again, in Audible and audiobooks, you need to have the right book. Some books are very good and very easy to listen into in audiobooks. Others, it just doesn't work in audio. And then it's similar as you, Kindle and physical. So there's always 3 books ongoing. There's one in the audio, there's one on the Kindle, and there's one physical.
Wow. Okay. That's well, I have to say, since I started recording this, I read a lot less than before. And so yeah, I'm really trying, because there's so much other things, because you talked about learning. We're both connecting on Duolingo, where we keep learning as well, and keep learning and other kind of things. So yeah, there is a limit to what kind of sources, but I do still read a lot, and I think that's a lot of the things. But we'll talk about books in a minute. When you say keep skateboarding, could you give examples for people if they want to do that? And like, okay, we talk about learning about with reading. Are there other ways that you learn that are not about reading or listening to books?
I think the one I learned the most from is by doing. So being inspired either by books or by blogs or by other people, or in some cases by constraints. So if people put some kind of constraint, this cannot, is like the red flag for a bull. It's like, okay, let's try this cannot, pass by it. So many of those things. So people came to me as well. Yeah, you cannot do mob programming with more than 20 people. I did. But I also rapidly split it up into a backend scenario and then a front end. And then the driver of the backend became navigator in the front end, and the driver of the front end became navigator in the backend. You have this continuous integration of IDs now and readiness of backend to front end and things like that. It was amazing. By the end of the day, they had the screen with the business functionality implemented. When their manager or product owner, I don't know who came in anymore, when they came in, they showed it. They were, look at this, what we did in this one day. And then this guy said, normally it would have taken you 3 weeks.
And so now this collaborative, and when you say you split it up backend and front end, were there then 2 groups programming or in the same room, or how should I see that?
No, they were really in the same. Well, we first started with like, okay, what are we going to work? Well, we first trained them on a bit of, not a bit, extreme TDD, by the way. Also dealing with legacy code and what mob programming really is. So, and then I think day 2 or 3, we just said, okay, what kind of bug are you postponing for a long time that you want to address today, or which kind of functionality which is not being analyzed like you used to would you like to address? And then somebody came up with the idea of a screen with sort of functionality, and then with the entire group on a whiteboard using the fishbowl practice, by the way, 5 people on the board. If somebody steps out, somebody needs in, things like that. We spent 30 minutes doing a mini refinement. And then we said, now we start coding on one machine with a very big screen. And people were, yeah, but we don't know enough. It's like, no, we start. So, and then the first thing they did was importing their agreed project structure. So, and then we started asking, like, yeah, why do we need this? And then they started blank with a decent test and applying TDD. And by doing this, you know, the people actively listen to each other, and because they were taught to navigate properly before. So they really listened to each other. They still all had different ideas about the implementation, but because we did the backend coding, we started with backend coding, people start to integrate their ideas and start to consolidate towards the implementation that they all wanted to start up. And while we grew the code, I think after 2 iterations of 20 minutes, it was clear for everybody what was going to happen and where we need to go. And that's the moment when we split into front and back end. And not front and back end separate. You already heard the driver of the back end became navigator in the front end. So if something was ready in the back end, the front end immediately knew, and the other way around. If there were problems that the back end needs to solve, the back end driver became navigator in the front end, was immediately solved. So we were all working on the same branch in this case together. So amazing. I loved it.
I hear the passion and already some triggers to try out some of that stuff. And the ensembling that I've seen working, it's indeed the energy it gives, the information that flows. It's interesting that we're living inside an environment where people still think that pair programming is a waste of time. And then if you go for trying that ensembling, where it's actually skyrocketing with even more people working on the same thing, but like you say, actually the flow of information that is so much more. Because I think these days we're in the knowledge management industry in a way, and this is our biggest problem in almost everywhere. How do you spread knowledge? How do you know everywhere? I remember a discussion with the CFO, the CTO that I'm working with now today. Like, how does nobody know that this is already done in the past and whatever? Yeah, it's part of something we need to work on, and so that is why we want to have more pairing and other kind of things to do. So really nice story to do that. And
I think ensemble actually, or mobbing is a lot easier than pairing. Pairing, you cannot step out. In an ensemble or mob, you can, if you feel like, okay, I want 50 minutes rest or do something else for 30 minutes, you can easily step out and in. There's no problem in there. No.
Yeah, I think, for actually doing it, I fully agree, but selling it is yet another level, and I've noticed in companies that sometimes.
No,
but it's
you heard the story, yeah? One day full screen with business functionality. Okay, not the implementation was not in their agreed structures yet, so they still need to change the implementation. But all the tests, the behavioral tests were there. With a bit of CSS, it could have become the documentation. So, but the functionality was working in one day. Otherwise, 3 weeks. That's the difference, yeah.
Yeah, but that's you don't need to convince me. I've seen a lot of. I've seen enough of that. I've seen enough of these kind of things in real life to know that it's actually much better. That the results are there. But what you just explained is very typical with everybody together. And I want to move to that next question. What have you worked about remote working? Did you try similar kind of things in remote, for example? And how does that work?
Well, if you would browse through my LinkedIn posts, then somewhere January or February before COVID, you will find a post from me asking for an organization to try out a full remote less, because I felt like I can handle it now. I have enough experience, skills, and insight that I think I can handle a full remote less. And then a month or 2 months later, COVID was kicking in.
So were people before like, it's not going to work, and now everybody had to do that. So yeah.
voila, I got my experimental lab immediately.
So we can all blame it on you. You were the reason why we all had to.
No, really. So the thing is, I got it working, by the way. So with a bit of struggles, a bit of learning. So it was not that bad. So as I thought it might have been. What I learned especially is that you can get it to work, and it's going to, for the outsiders, most probably work okay. But if you have been in a highly effective team, or you have been in an environment where you have multiple teams working on one backlog, one outcome, all together on one solution, if you understand this in a face-to-face world, then the remote world is never going to get close to that. So there's still going to be gap. It's okay, you can work like this, but it's never going to be as effective as the 3D collaboration, for sure. And I like who is it again? Simon Sinek, that says like trust is built on a coffee machine. So, and if it's full remote, continuously full remote, then you don't have those coffee machine moments. I think if you go full remote, you still need to have this like monthly coming together for coffee, drinks, socializing. I think that it might be better. What I also noticed is that the client I worked with at that moment in time, the teams that we onboarded before COVID, so in the physical world, this is also a nice anecdote, by the way, because when COVID hit, the first thing that somebody needed to do was get the approval of the boss, so a piece of paper for the police, that they had the approval to go to the office. Why? To get pictures of the whiteboards on the wall, because that was the only thing we had to manage the work. Amazing. Well, anyhow, so as soon as the company after COVID lockdown and all the rest say, okay, you can come back to the offices, that's the moment when the teams that before COVID actually as a team came back to the offices. So they just agreed to be at the location where each one of them would be closest by, because they had many offices in Belgium. So that's it. The teams that we onboarded in the full remote world didn't. And actually, even though when the company later on said at least one day in the week you must be at the office, they just all went into different offices that were available to them.
Wow. Okay.
So and this is for me. If you did not, I am still believing this. This is something I thought of in the past as well. If you never have been in a highly effective, real, good collaborating team, then you don't understand what a real team is. So I also think if you didn't really truly collaborated as a team or even multiple teams in a physical world, then you don't know what you miss. So I consider the remote setting and the things that we have there good enough. So, and if you have been in a situation where you have experienced and felt that kind of in-person 3D collaboration within the team and across multiple teams, then you know what you're missing and you want it. So I think this is the different. Also today, I think it's in the meantime 3 or 4 years ago or 2 years ago, I don't know. So even today, the people that worked together before COVID are still going into the office together as team and teams, and the others are still doing it mostly remote.
Yeah, I think I recognize a lot of that, and yeah, sometimes it's harder. I'm working these days with people in Ukraine, so yeah, that's we can't physically go to Ukraine. Well, I can, but it has some other kind of implications, and so yeah, there is definitely a difficulty in that kind of sense that I recognize.
But it worked, Dave. So I've guided an amazing Canadian company for a year and a half in their transformation, full remote. I've never been there. Actually, the first time when I saw a person from this was last year in the last conference, because it was a client going on stage. So, and I was shocked how large and tall that guy was. I assumed he was smaller, a lot smaller. So
everybody has the same height on the screen.
That's standing in front of me as well. Like, whoa! But this was a full remote and actually quite successful transformation. So it is possible, but it's for me still never going to be the same thing as the physical in person.
And you talked about the Simon Sinek thing about trust is built at the coffee machine. Do you have any tricks that you use remote to? It's not the same, you say, but are there things that you can create some kind of trust, or I don't know?
That's where I think with the extroverts, it's most probably easier than with the introvert engineers like myself.
Mm.
I see many of the people and also Scrum Masters that I worked with in the past coming with this icebreakers and other things that supposed to be fun. But for many of the introvert real engineers in there, it doesn't really work. So the only thing that I have is really get into synchronous working mode. So like mentioned before, I think pairing and ensemble or mobbing is a great way to actually get in beyond that concept. So we're at
Mhm.
the same thing in the same digital room then, and if somebody wants to get coffee, we get all coffee or something like that. So, but also not only that, if you work for an hour or an hour and a half with a larger bunch of people, you start joking around as well.
Well, you can also have some kind of joke, but you have to actively work on that. That's
Yes.
the thing that I see. I've noticed that I don't know how it's for you, but remote, when you have meetings remote, well, if you have meetings physically, we're a little bit early. We chat about the kids, the weather, the whatever. We create that kind of trust, like you say at the coffee machine. If it's remote, and as long as not everybody is there, people seem to think, oh, I keep working on my mail or Slack or whatever. It's like, no, actually start chatting with each other, start talking to each other. We have to actually, I needed to teach myself this. I need to actually say, like, okay, I'm here, Jürgen is here, how are you, how are things, how are and yeah.
The same thing. But what is a big difference in this scenario? If you say get people around in the remote world, like we are at this moment in time, there's only one audio output.
Mhm.
So, and this makes it a bit more reluctant for people to join in because it's immediately disturbing everybody. So if you're in a meeting room and I come early and you come early, we start talking, and then somewhere else, 2 meters away from us, some other people start talking, we actually can zoom in into our conversation and filter out the noise from next to us. If
Mhm.
somebody is standing in the middle, they can actually listen to our have a choice, either listening to our conversation or listening to the other
Or
conversation.
swap in the
Yeah,
middle, like, yeah, that's
it's a
yeah.
choice. We can focus and zoom in on a certain conversation and filter out noise. If it's in a remote world, we cannot. And this is
Not yet, I would
very.
say. Not
Huh?
yet, because it would be nice indeed if you could, in such a way, not really have breakout rooms, but just I click on you and we have a chat, and I click on someone else, and yeah, that.
Yeah, but it's still not. You don't pick up certain things that you hear next to you where this. So when the Oculus 2 came out,
Mhm.
so myself and a couple of friends and ex colleagues I worked with, or ex company employees I worked with, we all bought ourselves an Oculus and we were going to go into VR meeting.
Mhm.
Well, I'll see if it can work better. Actually, if there are possibilities there, yeah, and it work better, but the learning curve to get used to handling the joysticks in your hands and get the movement and all the rest, this learning curve to get there into a semi-fluent interaction
Mhm.
is so large that we were like, yeah, we have the persistence and the joy in experimenting, skateboarding again. So trying to figure things out, but most people are just going after half an hour, are going to say this doesn't work. But because
Mhm.
it took us actually really not half an hour, not an hour, it took us hours, days to actually get used to it, to be able to effectively collaborate with 5 people in a room.
Yeah, definitely, I think. But that's, again, this is the tooling, and this is where I think when we get other kind of tools, we might get it better because, like you say, it shouldn't be, yeah, it shouldn't be taking everybody so many hours, and yeah, definitely all these kind of environments. Well, if I put on a 3D glasses or things, I get dizzy. So yeah, that's also taking a long time to deal with that and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's another kind of things that people need to learn and can learn, and all these kind of things. So but really, it's. I think you mentioned something really important: a difference between the audio streams, that you really need to find ways on how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's also why,
we.
for example, lots of the collaborative sessions that you have remote are taking longer. They need more structure than you would need in a physical world.
And then again, you can do it in separate things because if you go physically to a location, you will be there 3-4 days. If you do it remotely, you can say, okay, let's take half a day and then half a day next week, and people have time to process, which is harder in a physical world, I would say. So yeah, I think pros and cons on all these kind of things.
Correct. And I think
Experiment.
an interesting part if you're in a full remote setting is trying to figure out what kind of information flow or things like that can actually move to more of an asynchronous way of communicating. So, and there's a company here with who is it again? Bart Vermeulen or somebody, his company, somebody I actually helped out in his previous employeeship. Now he has his own company with innovation games and game storming. Today we would call it liberating structures, but anyhow. So, and his full company is running on complete async communication, which is interesting to follow up on. Some interesting ideas here and there. So not that I'm a fan of or going to go like wow, but you learn things from a different perspective. Even though I'm into personal, in-person collaboration, synchronous. So I read and listen into his stories of a full async organization.
Well, for me, this is where the agile world can learn a lot about open source, sorry, because open source has done async in almost right from the start. And I think this is where we sometimes ignored what the lessons were learned over the last 20 years. It's different because, of course, open source could be with 10,000 people all having the passion to join a certain project to work with that. It might be different in a company, but still we can learn a lot on these kind of things as well.
Many successful open source frameworks is because some company or a company is starting to really use it and put effort in this. Where most probably there is again synchronous collaboration in the teams contributing to that platform.
Yeah, so it's never a black and white thing. It's always a lot of things in the different kind of directions. I fully agree there. But we could learn from both sides.
Keep skateboarding.
Exactly, that's the kind of thing. And talking about skateboarding and learning, let's move into a book. What's a book? And I know that you have a couple of books that you wanted to talk about. What's yeah, like you said already before, you're reading a lot, you're learning a lot. What's the thing that you want to bring out here today?
I think I put 2 books out to you in relation to organizational design.
Exactly.
Yeah, most probably. So if there's one, there's definitely going to be Russell Ackoff, the father of all systems thinkers, in my opinion. So, which is nice. Recreating the Corporation. I find this a very interesting book to read with very interesting concepts.
I think that's the book that you.
Yes, correct.
And it's already an older book, I would say. Yeah, it's been.
It's an older book, but the principles and the thought patterns and suggestions that are bringing forward to change the companies is actually quite interesting and still very much valid in today's world. To give you an example, I don't know which chapter, but he's talking about internal market economies. So, which I think is interesting. For you hear those very large companies coming like we have a platform group or a platform team or things like that. So, if we would enable internal market economies, it would mean that the other teams consuming the platform internally would pay a subscription fee, like a SaaS subscription, but according to market pricing.
Wow. As if it's an external one.
As if it's an external one. So with this kind of subscription fee, they need to be able to satisfy their own costs in that scenario. And not only their own cost, because then 30% or a percentage goes to the company for new products or facilities and all that other stuff. So this I consider very interesting. I think if you would, for example, apply internal market economies in many organizations these days, many of the so-called platform groups would go bankrupt. Because it's also not the obligation. If you do this, the teams that are using the platform, for example, could and have the openness to choose something else from external if they want to.
Because it's the same price anyway.
It's a similar price, so not necessarily the same, but similar pricing. So it's market price, so similar price, and they could go for somebody else. And I think this is generating an interesting system dynamics, because now also those platform groups really need to take care about their internal customers, because they are not obliged to use their thing anymore. So and all that stuff. So
when I'm hearing, but one of the questions I have is that if you're, of course, doing an external market, you have lots of customers. If it's an internal one, you have a limited number of customers. How did you deal with that? Because it's a whole different thing to sell it to 100,000 of clients and then say, I don't know, 5 or 10 teams. So how does that work?
It's the same thing, Yves. So if you cannot justify the cost for an internal employee, then why don't you buy it external?
So that kind of thing. Yeah, but I'm thinking it could be that people are still interested, think it's better, but because you only have like 5 internal teams that might use it, it still would.
That's where size matters, and then you talk about the economies of scale that playing ball. So in other words, if your organization is 100 people big or 50 people big, then there's no economical justification for having a platform team.
Exactly. That's I thought that was the direction it would go. I'm glad I verified that assumption. But that's indeed what I see in a lot of companies. They don't have to pay, and they keep asking for other stuff that we would never allow, or that the external company would never allow. And then and we might keep the team alive because, hey, we made it and we feel so great and whatever. But actually, we're adding features that might not be valuable.
Maybe those skilled engineers could be used in more real customer focused value generating problem solving instead of internal problem solving.
That's but yeah, it's so nice project. But I think both of us, we've seen many companies that have created their own kind of thing. I mean, yeah, companies creating their own programming language, their own building platforms, or all these kind of things. And if you're a Google, that might make sense, but if you're a smaller startup, it might not make sense to create your own programming language and things like that.
No. By the way, I'm not saying platform, but for example, you see lots of organizations, smaller ones, with having a DevOps team. Maybe for a temporary scenario or for a limited period of time, it maybe is necessary to clean up and create the capabilities for other teams to move faster, deploy faster, have a nicer environment. But once that capability is there, it would be good to let them dissolve into the other teams that are more customer facing, most probably.
Yeah, I agree there, and that's the kind of the example I wanted to give, because then people might feel, but we need it, and we keep adding stuff, but are we actually needed? And if you then put the real DevOps again in the teams and do it, then you will still improve the things, but based on what is used customer wise space, but then using the customers that are then your other teams in a way, or your own team. That's really nice. And you wanted to bring out a second book that was also about organizational design?
Nikolai Warren.
That one, exactly.
Yeah. I call the group I'm working with, and I call myself the Chief Simplification Officer. If you see on the subtitle there, what was it again? Show it again, Yves. The subtitle:
Simplification Complex System.
That's I have to read that book. So, and it's to be honest, it's one of the more practical books in organizational design I have read. So it gives you also workshops. It gives you the concept of organizational design matrices, and then he talks about functions, but functions are more like the purpose, the reason of being for certain things. What are essential functions, non-essential functions, then how is coupling, and not the similar thing as coupling in code, Yves, which is for me, that's why I had to read the book twice. I was too much thinking about software development and not about organizational design. But if you understand how it's different, and it's an amazing tool set of practices to design organizations that are fit for purpose, really connected to the organization's strategy. So if you look at strategy consultants these days, I think they are way too much busy with OKRs and governance and following up on content of the strategy, but not on what kind of organization, what is an organizational design that would fit the strategy to be smoothly implementing that strategy. And this is where Nicolai Warren kicks in tremendously with lots of great tools. By the way, I'm talking now Nicolai Warren. Later on, colleague, less trainer of mine, Cesario Ramos, came, I think, 2 years ago in the less trainer meetup. He came to me with his new book, Creating Agile Organizations. And also, this book is amazing, by the way. It's a kind of summary of Akov, Nicolai Warren, and a couple of others. And they made it more easy readable, more into an agile language. What I love is that within Cesario's book, for example, they make good references. So all the books that they used where they picked up the tools like Design Matrix and things, they reference it very well. So, and because I read Cesario's book or Creating Agile Organizations after I have read the originals, it was like, oh, this is a nice summary. Yeah, amazing stuff. So it's
yeah, and you were talking about well, some people in the less community. I was actually thinking you would make the link to what Alexi is doing with organizational topologies. Is there a link between these kind of things, or is that a completely different kind of thing? Because I know you know that one as well, and I always saw it as some kind of organizational design, or is that much difference there?
I think what Nicolai Warren is putting forward and Russell Akov is putting forward is most probably helpful in the topologies spectrum to move things more to the upper right corner. But it's definitely different. I think it's also broader. But my current understanding of top and less and creating agile organizations and other things is that topology is very good for product strategic Fuki organizations. To go there to have more of innovation, faster time to market, learning if their innovation new tech is actually desirable in the market. Because if you look at the business model canvas, and you would say, okay, we have three parts in there, the two top parts and then a flat line below. Then the part with more of the customer part is the assumption of desirability. Then the top left part is more about, is it feasibility? So can we actually build it? And then the bottom part is viability. Those are huge assumptions you need to validate for each bigger business idea you have. So being more in the top right of our topologies will give you this capability as an organization to rapidly validate those three before investing way too much money. So this is where I think for product strategic Fuki, it's very, very, very easy. But if you look at Nicolai Warren, but also creating agile organizations in that context, it goes beyond the product group. It includes, for example, how do we work with non-essential functions or non-essential purposes, things that need to happen in a company like financial controlling. How does it fit or not fit? What do we do in marketing, sales? That might have a different Fuki actually than the product-centric Fuki. So how do you align on that start? Where do we want high alignment between those groups? And where do we want high autonomy? And how do you build more resilience into an organization? And this is where I think in topologies is not necessarily going to give you the right tools and methods there. Then again,
because that's more on the development part,
by the way, but more for a product group. But if you reach the limits of the product group or you go into sizable organizations, let's say 10, 20,000 people, then you also will have different scenarios where I think it will be difficult or different to use topologies. So it's a bit like large-scale Scrum. I'm a fan of it. By the way, I'm also becoming more and more a fan of FAST, the fluid scaling technology. Interesting domains. So, but they also limit themselves at the product group and product development group. So, and I think topologies is a bit broader than less or fast is. For example, it gives you more context and even go wider in mapping out organizational settings and organizational design. But if you then look at creating agile organizations or designing agile organizations, or the work from Nicolai Warren or Akov, for example, in this context, is even broader than that. So and they're all very much connected to each other and aligned with each other. So the principles behind it are very much similar. But
Exactly.
one is
That's
very
what I was
broad,
thinking.
then orthop is a bit smaller, and then if you go to less or faster thing, it's again a bit smaller. So and this way they elevate each other.
Yeah, that's why I made the link. But yeah, of course, I'm now much really in a product organization, and that's why I have this interest in that kind of thing. But yeah, I didn't think about the broader context. So that's really as interesting as extra context about.
If for example you are more in let's say operational strategic focus, like for example a service organization of common goods like electricity, gas, water, things like that. They have an operational focus. They want to be predictable, stable, all that stuff. In that scenario, you will need to set up your organization differently than a product strategic focus. You might still have products, but they will be directly connected to most probably the key processes of the operations in the organization, and not just product aside of it, because this would create frustration. So that's
Yeah,
where
because
I think,
it's the services that really, yeah, that need some
and that's where I
predictability.
then think like, okay, our topologies is mainly looking at business and things like that, but they grow their model most probably from a product strategic focus perspective. Way more than the others. So how does it all fit? I don't know that much, but I think
Yeah,
it's
but that's again, this is why I think you sharing the things that you already or that you keep learning. That doesn't mean that you've figured everything out,
not at
because
all.
that's a different kind of thing. Okay, we've been talking for a long time, and there's lots of questions, lots of stories. What is a question that you think I should also ask you that I haven't asked you so far? And what's the answer then?
I think you asked this before as well, or am I wrong? So I think it's most probably something I tend to ask to others recently. So if you could implement one change in any kind of agile framework, so what would it be and why? I love this kind of
Okay. So what would that be? What if there is one? Yeah, that's I'm really intrigued about that question. So how would that be for you?
For me, I would go with Scrum because it's the most known to me since 1998 already. And then the change I would make is sprint planning, and both work together as well as separate. So let's say sprint becomes learn or learning, and then planning becomes design for collaboration. So, and then if you have sprint planning, it's pretty much designed for collaborative learning, which is sounding a lot more nicer to me than sprint planning. So, and then sprint itself is just a learning time box. So
I like that idea because it's one of the things I personally this. Are you still there? Yeah. Your screen froze for a moment. Yeah. The one of the things that I'm sometimes frustrated with Scrum is indeed the word sprint, because it's like we have to sprint. We have to. No, it's because it's you. Once your sprint is over, you sprint again. There's no sprinter that will sprint one sprint after the other. It's yeah, it's a disaster for burnout basically. And so yeah, I really like that, but I've never found a different word that would work. Well, iteration or things like that, but and so the learning aspect, and so because yeah, definitely we talked already a lot about learning. How would that influence the way people work? Have you tried that out? Yeah.
Have I tried it out? Not really, because people are stuck into sprint planning. But actually, when I explain or help people out in with Scrum, I say this really. I say sprint planning. The main purpose of sprint planning is to design for the collaboration. So they already understand. If I work with backlogs and things like that, it's all about learning. Like I mentioned before, desirability, feasibility, viability, they're all assumptions. So if I work with people in refinement sessions, for example, collaborative refinement sessions, the thing I mainly focus on, what is the underlying hypothesis or the assumption that you make by posting this, make it more explicit. because all of those things is about learning. We need to learn if it's true or false, if we need to pivot, yes or no. So it's all about learning. So on the product, it's learning on the product level, which is an sprint review. So which is learning on the product level. If you then have a sprint retrospective, it's learning on the collaboration internally, but also externally maybe. So the daily scrum is learning on the execution, on the way we are operating at this moment in time. So it's all learning.
Yeah, that's. I fully agree. It's well, we talked, or I talked before about the knowledge management, the whole, yeah, indeed, ensembling. It's about spreading the knowledge. It's about learning in all kind of ways. It's yeah, that's. And I think, I don't know who said it, but I've read it once. Like, yeah, if you're not learning, you're not really working in an agile way. And I really like that kind of quote, because I think it's, if you're just doing a mechanical thing, but we're not learning, like, how agile are we still at that kind of level? So yeah, I definitely agree on that kind of thing. So yeah, wonderful question. Thanks both for the question and the answer.
How would you answer the question? You cannot give the same answer now.
Well, these days, I would say that I'm much less linked to a certain frameworks or these kind of things. But for me, one of the things I feel that is not stressed enough in Scrum is the whole technical practices, because I remember talking, I think it's Ken Schwaber that I talked with, that said at some point, like, in one of the conferences, that like we focused outside technical practices because the technical practices were already taken care of. Extreme programming is doing it really well, and it's really collaborating really good together. And I do remember that first book, the black book with the letters and different kind of things. It does. I think there is one sentence that mentioned that, like, okay, you need technical excellence for working in a Scrum way, but that's about it. And I think for me, I would stress that out even more. That I don't know how, but that would be something I always stress when people work with Scrum. Yeah, it's the combination with technical practices. It's so important. Yeah, that's. Thank you.
Yeah, I cannot agree more, actually. So, and I think there's too much fuss in. Sometimes people pay too much fuss on process and structures and all the rest of the stuff, ignoring technical excellence, and then it's going to introduce more pain than benefits.
Well, I think what we in the Agile community, there's, or the people outside the Agile community, Agile has become a bad name, and in many cases, because indeed a lot of bureaucracy, or they see it as bureaucracy, and they see, oh, we have all these extra meetings. Well, if you introduce Scrum or less or whatever, the idea is that you remove all the other meetings that you have, but somehow it adds on top of it, and yeah, then that doesn't work, of course. So that's the whole other kind of thing. And like you said, if you work remote, you need some kind of structure. So I do understand some of that.
Yeah.
But without technical excellence, it doesn't make any sense.
It's astonishing, Yves. So larger organizations where they have hundreds of people working on the same product set by means of projects and programs, they all touch the same code base. And they all have such a lousy technical practices and lousy code, so that every 3 to 4 years they need to start with a full rewrite, which is tremendously costly. Yeah? So instead of just focusing, not really necessarily on process, just start focusing that people understand what good loose coupled architecture is. How do you make things changeable? How do we apply and deploy small changes continuously? I think this is going to be a lot more beneficial to many organizations than yet another management fad coming up.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit what we see in organizations, that the people who've been there then 10 or 20 years, like, yeah, there's another one. You will be out in 2 years, and then there will be another thing, and like, how will it influence me? And yeah, and so, and some people get it, but yeah, it's again, without a lot of technical excellence, it's a lot of these things are going to die. And you said it about the code base. I see the same thing happening on documentation. Somehow the Confluence or the SharePoint is a mess, and so we throw it away. We put in a new system, but we don't learn how to structure. We don't work on getting structure and getting it. And so what you do is you set up a new structure, you import the data that you still find interesting, you set a new structure, and then people keep messing around for another 2-3 years until it's so bad that we need to replace it again. And
if we look at documentation, I think that's where organizational structures are badly implemented, and collaboration is not highly effective. And then they try to put the collaboration into documentation and structures and process instead of facilitating events or moments together where this kind of collaboration and synced communication is happening. I think who is it again? Alistair Cockburn that wrote this thing, and the effectiveness of communication, the written documentation is the lousest one. Then you have
exactly.
text messages and then phone calls, and so in person on a whiteboard is the most effective one. So, and too much of things that should happen on that top level start being pushed into processes and things on the lower level.
Yeah, and exactly. That's
where things really go nuts. If I look like, for example, Ysoft, but also other companies that I work with, where they don't even use task management tools. They're or like I mentioned before, they had to go to the office and take a snapshot of what is on the whiteboard in the office. Otherwise, we didn't know what we needed to work on. So this is where true collaboration and physical collaboration is successful. They don't need tools to document tasks and stories and diagrams and things. They need user documentation and the final documentation afterwards. But that's part of the product delivery towards your users. All the rest was just managed within the collaboration that was effective at that moment in time. This way, you don't have this over bloating SharePoints and Confluences all over the place. Huh?
I really like that because it reminds me of, and I'm trying to come up with the name. I don't come up with the name right now, but a person that said, like, we call all these tools like collaboration tools, but they're not collaboration tools. The real a Slack or thing you might call some kind of collaboration, but a Confluence or a SharePoint is not about collaboration. It's about documentation, and it's once you collaborate, you can document it somehow, but it's not a collaboration tool. Totally not. And we haven't really seen many collaboration tools yet. We still need to invent them. So that's a whole different kind of thing. It's a really interesting question to ask and to see where that leads us. I want to go to that very last question about who do you think I should invite next? And I know that you had a couple of people that you were thinking about.
First and foremost, I would say Victor Grujic. So the one that also started to work with me and collaborate with me in writing this new book on cognitive load.
And that's Victor, if I'm correct?
Yes. So he's amazing. So a bit maybe 2 times the same thing as myself, maybe. So also technically schooled and capable, but also very understanding about system dynamics and organizational design. So an exceptional animal, a rare animal in our world, I would say. Now,
I'm really
you have the
looking
chance
forward
to come on board, and please do so. It will be amazing conversations.
Victor it was on my list for right from the start, I would say. And that's a little bit, I'm always waiting for who will invite who. I sometimes make exceptions, but this is, the list is now, this weekend it was at 630, so it's kind of hard to start inviting people themselves. But I'm really happy to have Victor on.
You will need to put your timings different. He's in Asia, so...
He's in Hong Kong, if I'm correct. But I know that's definitely something. I did recordings that I started at midnight for exactly that kind of people are in this kind of thing. So that is possible. You wanted to invite? I think we have 2 more names. Who else did you think?
2 more. Steve Denaire. And the reason I put Steven De Smet there,
this is Steven, right?
This is Steven. So, and then people might say, yeah, he's putting his business partner out there in the training community, but that's not the reason. The real reason I would like you to have a chat with him is because Steven, his full life was all related to projects and programs. He was the only Prince 2 licensed trainer in Belgium. So all that stuff. Until he came in 2015 to my last training. At the second day of the last training, at lunch, he said, you know what, my world is broken down. I start to realize that actually we don't need projects or programs whatsoever. My full life has been them. And at that moment in time, he really switched around completely. So somebody that built his life around projects, built his business around projects, PM Book and Prince 2. That's, overnight, poof. And today he's one of the most knowledgeable agile Scrum persons that I know about. So it's amazing, the learning curve and the swap he made. It's a lot bigger swap than I stopped working after 16 years being employee in the same company. I thought this is a big change. Actually, I consider that even bigger.
Mm-hmm. And it's also amazing how quickly Steven embraced the agile community and got embraced by the agile community, because from hardly knowing or seeing him, all of a sudden he was all around and indeed bringing things in a way that I think, like, okay, many people who didn't have that other background that he had would not be able to go and have that kind of learning and teaching on these kind of things. So that's definitely a nice example that's really good. And indeed, you still had a third name. I don't know if you remember who you brought. I could bring up the picture and then you can
bring up the picture.
That's the person I think.
Tim Wiegel. Yeah. I got to know Tim after he returned from his Sabbath somewhere. I forgot where. So where he really had this extension on top of Obea on how to structure it for more of leadership management teams. So leading with Obea. So we had some nice conversations in relation to that. Today he's doing very well with his book, Leading with Obea, and the related courses and certificates. So he's a smart guy in connecting more of the lean principles into leadership and management. So I've been mentored by him in certain things of that domain. So, and then I simplified a couple of things, and still today, some of the principles and patterns that he teaches me, I actually still use at clients as well. So also this, he brings a nice addition, just like our Topologies brings a nice addition to this kind of creating or designing agile organizations and less or fast, for example. It's an amazing.
And meanwhile, while you introduce him, you also mentioned something that I think is good to stress out, because he's been helping you. Is this something that you think is necessary, helpful to have a coach or a mentor yourself in everything that we do?
I would not say everything that we do, but at least for myself, if I start skateboarding, trying out new tricks, for example, and I know there's an expert, then that is reachable and willing to have a conversation and things like that, then I reach out and try to understand how the trick is really working so that I can try it out on my own skateboard and then tweak it, maybe do it a bit differently. So also share that information, share the learnings back and forth. It's not because I'm the junior learning person that there cannot be learning in the other way around towards Tim. I'm pretty sure Tim learned some things from me. But okay, the way in was more on his side than my side.
Yeah, but I really like that because I think it's also important that people realize that once people are at a certain level, that we can still learn and we can help and have people in. Because I think many people indeed, when you start skateboarding, you will think about it. but you're an expert already for so many years in many things agile, but that doesn't mean that you still cannot learn other kind of things. And I think that is very valuable also for people to hear that. Because for me it's also like I really like to, I still have a coach where, or multiple people that I go to depending on what I'm running into. And I think that's very valuable for people to learn, like, okay, look, and like you said, it's not needed for everything and not all the time, but yeah, it might be really interesting for
So
people to do that.
at least once every year, I also try to go to some kind of in-person classroom training as well to catch up on or learning certain things. And depending on what kind of topics, I have different mentors. On my technical side, because you say technical excellence, for example, and coding. On my technical side, I still learn a lot from Olivier Costa, that is working with us. So, but also from Thierry Depot, who's every now and then working with us or helping us out with clients. So this is amazing if you have this kind of experts surrounding you, where you can just touch on where, if I have a problem within 24 hours or something else, they will be there with some suggestions, options, or teach me a new trick. So it's cool.
Exactly. That's Thierry. I don't know the exact number, but I'll put the link in the show notes. Thierry was already on the show for the exact thing. I think it's like wonderful how he focused, how he swapped his focus. Actually, I do remember talking with him, trying out multiple things, and then at some moment clicking, like, okay, but I'm going to go in that direction, and then really been amazed at many different kind of things. And I actually have asked him a question last night on LinkedIn, just a DM to ask a very small thing. I was almost sure that I knew what the answer would be, and it was like 80% right and 20% wrong what I asked. So I learned a lot just by having a 5-minute chat with him. So that was yeah, I think that's a little bit how it works when you have a network of all these smart people that can bring you up in these kind of things.
And just like you, I think this is actually the main driver as well, to get more and more expertise, better and better. Surround you with people that are actually better than yourself, maybe in different domains, and listen to them.
Yeah, that's for me the main reason or one of the reasons to have this chat and learn on different kind of things. Of course, I'm talking here also a lot, but still, it's a lot about learning and listening. So yeah, well, Jürgen, I really want to thank you. We're almost out of time. I would say we planned it until 10 o'clock, so it's about 10 o'clock. Yep. It's been a wonderful time. If people want to reach out to you, what would be best way to contact you?
I think the easiest way to contact me is through LinkedIn.
And if I'm correct, that should be your.
Yes, that's my LinkedIn. I think that's going to be the easiest way.
Yeah, and I think that's that was for many people it is these days. Yeah, it's like I said, it's been a wonderful time. By now, it still is not dark in Belgium, but it's getting dark, I would say. It's officially we're near summer. The weather doesn't feel like it, but but luckily it still is a little bit longer light out there, I would say. So yeah, thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, E, for asking me around.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.